my name is Thomas Wilburn. I am really thrilled to be here. I am a data journalist who recently moved to Chicago, so I'm still getting to know the city, and it's very exciting. But I've been coding for probably about 10 years professionally now, inside and outside of newsrooms. And when I first started, one of the things that for me was something nobody ever talked about was accessibility. And there were times where I would sometimes get a little bit better at it, but it was almost always for selfish reasons. I got really bad carpal tunnel out of college, and so I became much more aware of keyboard navigation because I couldn't really use a mouse. The one thing that I was always really shying away from learning, though, was how to use a screen reader, how to work on sites on the web and any kind of software that will work correctly for readers and users who can't see and are operating through a screen reader. And it's really a shame because the nice thing about a screen reader is that we all have one, right? This used to be a really difficult external piece of software that we would have to install. And in some cases, it was tremendously expensive. To this day, JAWS is one of the screen readers for Windows, and it is thousands of dollars. And nobody who uses it ever upgrades because nobody ever wants to pay the money unless their office is paying for it. But all of us who have a smartphone have an easy-to-use, reasonably sophisticated screen reader right in our pockets. And so if you want to dive in, if you want to start testing for accessibility for screen readers, this is a great way to start because it's easy to use, it's right there, you should already be testing for mobile, so it just puts you way ahead of the game. And then transferring these skills into a desktop screen reader is going to be super simple. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to walk you through the process because this is interactive. If you want to do it with me, we'll all have a bunch of robots chanting from the audience. It'll be great. The most important thing when it comes to using a screen reader on mobile is being able to quickly turn it on from any place that you might be located in the OS. And so we're going to do that using the quick access. The other really important thing is being able to turn it off. Because when you activate this, two things are going to happen. One, it's going to start shouting at you in a robot voice, which is fine. That's what it's supposed to do. But the second thing is all of the normal ways that you control your phone are going to stop working. Instead, the interface is going to switch to a gestural interface. It's all going to be swipes. Nothing's going to be direct manipulation anymore. And it is really easy to freak out and just have to reboot the whole thing, unless you remember that once you can quick toggle it on, you can quick toggle it right back off. And so for testing, you can go on and off very quickly. It's super handy. So I'm going to start with how to do this on iOS. In your general settings, if you look, there should be an option for accessibility. Under accessibility, there's going to be an option for accessibility shortcut. And what this shortcut is triple clicking the home button. Now you can set more than one thing. You can, for example, have it so that it turns on color filters to test for color blindness. And if you check more than one thing, triple clicking that button is going to bring up a menu where you can pick from what accessibility features you want to toggle. But if you just choose VoiceOver, it'll just activate it or deactivate it when you triple click. If you're on Android, which I am, it's going to be very similar. Under your settings, there's going to be an accessibility option, and these may vary because Android phones get customized by Samsung or whoever, but it's going to be something like this. There will be a volume key shortcut. You're going to set that to TalkBack, which is the name of the accessibility screen reader on Android, and it will be holding the volume up and down keys for 3 seconds. So you'll hold them for 3 seconds, it'll say TalkBack on. You hold them for 3 seconds, it'll say TalkBack off. One of the things I recommend is, it's kind of weirdly nonchalant, but under TalkBack in the accessibility, there's this settings, and it looks like a header, but it's actually the menu that you can go in to change your settings. I don't know why they have an extra thing. Under the developer settings, you can actually on Android set it so that it will display the spoken output on screen in a toast at the bottom. And one of the nice things about that is it means that you can actually test in an office without having to plug in headphones because you can just mute it and then read what the screen reader would be telling you. Okay, So let's assume that you've got that working. How do we actually use it? Like I said, when you turn this on, it's going to stop responding to taps. You can't touch things, you can't click things anymore. How do we get anything done? So the answer is going to vary a little bit between the operating systems, but there's a core set of gestures that we can use on both, and as long as you remember those, it's a good start. You can get into the more advanced stuff later. So the basic gesture that you're going to use is left and right will move you between navigation elements. So that would be buttons, links, anything that's clickable, including the web view, but then also moving out to like other things like the back button or the address bar. So you can go left and right, and it's going to be like hitting tab on your keyboard. It's just going to move through whatever it is that you're interacting with. The next thing is, okay, so I've got a thing selected, and it'll indicate it with a little focus rectangle. This rectangle isn't provided by the web page. A lot of you, I hope, will have heard the advice that you should never disable the focus style in a browser without at least replacing it. But in a screen reader, this is manually inserted. In fact, I simulated it for this, but on Android, it's this big, hideous green rectangle. And so that'll show you where the focus is. To actually click or activate that thing, you just double tap anywhere on the screen. And that's the same as clicking on the focused item. Now, one neat thing about this, if you need to get to something very quickly and you don't feel like swiping through all the elements because you're just trying to test, is if you single tap on the screen, it will select the thing that you tapped. And then you can double tap to actually click it. If you tap and drag, it's like feeling your way around the screen, and it'll announce whatever it is that your finger moves under. So that's a really, for a lot of interfaces where it may be really difficult, you might think about like a Twitter client where it's got like the add tweet button and it just kind of floats in the middle of nowhere. It's really important. One of the reasons why that's in a consistent location is because people who are using a screen reader are probably used to reaching and checking that part of the screen using the feel by touch in order to navigate and see if there's a button there. All right, so we can single touch to find things, we can double tap to activate anything on screen. Let's get more complicated. Let's say that we want to move around the page in a way that doesn't involve just moving through links. So for example, if I'm listening to a page as a screen reader user and I get distracted and I miss a paragraph, or there's something here that I want to listen to, I want to move up a page, but that's not necessarily a focusable element. How do I find it? Well, the answer is we want to use landmarks. And this is part of why semantic HTML is so important, because it gives our users landmarks like main or navigation or section that they can use to find things. Headers also work this way. So on iOS, if you want to change what kind of thing you navigate to, you make a twisting motion with your hand, and this is going to change the rotor. You're going to see a dial come up on screen, and it's going to point an arrow towards the different kinds of navigation you can do, like, oh, I'm going to change to jumping between headers when I swipe. And then you'll swipe up or down on an iPhone to move between landmarks. On Android, almost all of the gestures are single touch, because it was meant to work on cheap phones, and because it also makes it easy to use single-handed. You don't need to reach over with a second hand. So on Android, swiping up and down will change the mode from being like default navigation to being headlines or headers, links, application windows, that kind of thing. And then swiping left-right, it basically changes the granularity of that left-right swipe gesture. So those are the different ways that you have to move through things if you don't necessarily want to just navigate by touch and you don't want to kind of painstakingly move through. It's worth keeping in mind, part of the reason that I think it's important for us to learn this, and especially important to learn on a phone, is because this is a really crucial way to build empathy with these users. When I first started using this, the way that I was doing it was on the bus in Seattle. And I would keep my phone in my pocket and I would try and use web pages this way. And it is ridiculously clumsy to use a lot of web pages if they're not set up well for a screen reader. And granted, I wasn't very good at it, but also it's just not a pleasant process. We basically ask people to trade the ability to use this technology for the increased amount of time that it takes them to use it compared to a sighted user. And so part of our goal here is to realize just how cumbersome these are so that we can help leave clues, leave semantic breadcrumbs, so that we can have a better designed experience for our screen reader users. Okay, hopefully at this point I haven't gone over 10 minutes since I expected everybody to be kind of like testing things. I wanted to make sure. If you are interested, I will post these in the meetup, these slides in the meetup group. But there's additional information on different gestures and additional options you can set for both Android and iOS. And once you're comfortable doing this on mobile, please try to use this on desktop. NVDA is available for free on Windows. VoiceOver is installed on every Mac. And now that you've got the foundation, there really shouldn't be any excuse that you can't test for accessibility, no matter where you are. Thank you.